Kamala Harris's campaign strategy of leaning heavily on celebrity endorsements was like watching a bad Hollywood remake. Glitzy on the outside, hollow on the inside.
Now, you and I have spoken a lot about Kamala Harris relying on vibes, TikTok likes, dancing and celebrities to get her over the line, and it failed. And now celebrities are turning on each other. Many within the Democrats believe actor George Clooney is to blame for doing serious damage to the left. Bo, who would have thought that the rich elites didn't appeal, after all, to middle Americans doing it tough?
Well, look, Clooney was right that Joe Biden wasn't the right candidate to lead them. That's true. But when he put his support behind Kamala Harris, that was detrimental. But let's be clear, it wasn't just George Clooney that's to blame. I mean, you can point one finger at him. It was the DNC. It was the media. It was the Hollywood elites. And it was some Republicans. Think about the Cheneys, Liz and Dick Cheney. They're to blame, too. They put their money behind the wrong candidate. And no amount of hatred for Donald Trump could make Kamala Harris a better candidate.
Bringing in George Clooney and other A-listers was supposed to boost her appeal, but instead, it highlighted just how disconnected the political elite are from everyday Americans. Let's be real, middle-class voters don't give a damn about what celebrities think. This over-reliance on star power came off as tone-deaf, showcasing a campaign more interested in flash than substance. It felt like a desperate move to distract from real issues, and people saw right through it. The left keeps betting on celebrity clout to score political points, but it's a losing strategy. Rubbing elbows with influencers doesn't win over folks trying to pay their bills. Voters don't want lectures from millionaires. They want real solutions. By pandering to Hollywood elites, Harris's campaign alienated the very people it needed. The whole thing came across as elitist, out of touch, and exactly what makes everyday Americans skeptical of the political establishment. This is where the real disconnect shows. Instead of tackling kitchen table issues, jobs, healthcare costs, crime, the DNC seems more invested in selling a polished narrative. Flashy candidates without the grit or authenticity to back it up aren't what voters need, and they've noticed. The result? A voter base that feels left behind, disrespected, and ready to check out or switch sides. No amount of celebrity endorsements can mask that glaring issue. The Democrats' refusal to face this head-on is exactly what's keeping them adrift and losing credibility fast. Donald Trump's success with rural and working-class America wasn't some stroke of luck. It was a strategy rooted in direct engagement and understanding what these communities actually care about. While Democrats were busy pandering to coastal elites and talking down to flyover states, Trump was out there speaking their language. He showed up in places most politicians barely acknowledge, talking about jobs, factories, and the kind of economic struggles that hit home. He made it clear that he saw them, flaws and all, while the left came across as dismissive or, worse, sneering. That raw connection, even if it came with plenty of bluster, made all the difference. You can't fake authenticity, no matter how many celebrities you bring to the campaign trail. When Trump won the election, the collective meltdown from celebrities was a spectacle in itself, one that seemed more detached from reality than any blockbuster they've starred in.
Yeah, and some of Hollywood's biggest stars have threatened to leave the US following Trump's election victory. Singer Cher, for example, claimed that she dealt with health issues that were directly sparked by Trump's presidency term in the first instance, would you believe? And she said that she would leave the country for good. Bo, have any of these elites actually stopped to ask themselves not how Donald Trump won the election, but why? Because that is key here.
The threats to leave the country? Please. It was less of a serious political statement and more of a dramatic performance meant to signal just how above it all they were. But for millions of everyday Americans, this reaction came off as entitled whining, a refusal to engage with why Trump's message resonated so deeply with working-class voters. It highlighted, with glaring neon lights, the disconnect between Hollywood's bubble and real-world struggles. Instead of reflecting on what drove people to vote for Trump, many stars doubled down on moral grandstanding. The spectacle didn't help the political left's cause. It only deepened divides. Watching millionaires vow to leave the U.S. because a Democratic election didn't go their way wasn't the rallying cry they thought it would be. It was more like pouring salt into an already festering wound for the middle and working-class voters who felt neglected and sneered at. The outrage from Hollywood didn't bridge any gaps. It widened them, confirming suspicions that the elites really don't get or care about the priorities of everyday Americans. And when your biggest political strategy is built on finger-wagging from a stage, don't be shocked when voters tune out. Kamala Harris's focus on reproductive rights as the cornerstone of her appeal to women missed a critical point. Women aren't single-issue voters. Sure, it's an important topic for many, but acting as though it's the only issue that matters feels reductive and even patronizing. Suburban women, in particular, are grappling with rising living costs, public safety concerns, and the daily grind of balancing work and family. By failing to address these bread-and-butter issues in a meaningful way, Harris's campaign strategy seemed tone-deaf. It came across like she was preaching from a script instead of actually listening to what women want and need. Politicians keep making the mistake of thinking that pandering to stereotypes will win hearts, but it's 2024, and voters see right through it. The political left often assumes that championing one socially charged issue will rally an entire demographic, but it's not that simple. Women, especially suburban women, are tired of being boxed in. They want to hear how you'll make their neighborhoods safer, how you'll ease their financial burdens, and what you'll do about schools. By sticking to a narrow narrative, Harris ended up alienating the very group she was banking on to rally around her. Meanwhile, the issues that hit closest to home, the economy, safety, the everyday concerns that impact their families, went largely unaddressed. The result? A campaign that felt out of sync with reality and a missed opportunity to connect where it really mattered. Donald Trump's decision to dive headfirst into podcasts and new media was a savvy move that demonstrated a keen understanding of where conversations are really happening. While traditional media clings to polished sound bites and scripted interviews, podcasts offer raw, unfiltered discussions that resonate with younger, anti-establishment audiences. By showing up on platforms where authenticity is valued and engagement is direct, Trump positioned himself as someone willing to engage, argue, and even joke without a teleprompter in sight. Meanwhile, Kamala Harris and much of the Democratic establishment seemed hesitant, almost afraid, to step into that arena. The result? Trump came off as more accessible, more in touch, and far more willing to engage in real talk, even when it was messy. Harris's reluctance to embrace these new platforms painted her as part of the political elite who prefer controlled messaging and safe spaces. But here's the thing. Voters, especially younger ones, crave authenticity and transparency. They want leaders who aren't afraid to tackle uncomfortable questions and who are willing to speak without a PR team sanitizing every word. By avoiding podcasts and alternative media, Harris missed an opportunity to connect with a generation that distrusts the mainstream. Trump's willingness to engage in these spaces wasn't just a tactic, it was a sign that he understood where culture and politics are headed. And that gave him a serious edge.